Again, I'm Nikki, and I think my task is probably to do a little bit of conversation about what the legislative process looks like, the political situation, and some of the tone and tenor that we're going to be dealing with in this upcoming short legislative session. And then we'll have some additional policy details that we'll be able to talk through with you all. There's certainly a couple of priority pieces we're putting forward. I would consider us collectively, including you, consider now maybe this is our first ask to get engaged and stay engaged. We like to make some asks around here. That's what advocacy is all about. So we'll make it easy for you, but please, when we throw up the bat signal, please do reply to the best of your timing and ability, because your voice really matters in this, and it's what's driving the agenda that we'll talk about a little bit more later. The other things that are happening in the context of the legislative session, this is a 35-day session. And that means we're going to have deadlines for bills to be moving along if they want to remain part of the process by basically 1 week at a time. It's kind of like a 7 to 10 day window to keep things humming along. We're certainly going to be feeling the pressure right up front. Some of the work that we've got will have to start immediately. And that will be February 5th, Monday, 8 a.m. You know, there has been some question in the past about whether or not we'll achieve quorum. Quorum is Oregon's math problem, and Oregon's math problem has reared its head in the last handful of legislative sessions, meaning that enough legislators have not come to the building, have not shown up in person and clocked in on the Senate floor. It was very specifically the Senate floor in the last session, in order to allow work to go on. We have a Supreme Court case in Oregon that's being deliberated on right now about whether or not those who didn't make it to work, didn't make it to the office, but effectively are allowed back at the office. And we don't know yet what those results are unless somebody's seen them come out today. I think either way, the pressure has been on for that group of people to show up. Leadership in the House and the Senate, under Democratic control, Democratic majorities, including our governor's office, our executive office, they've all been working pretty hard to try and negotiate tight, small, but impactful packages that will allow for Republicans to feel that they can come back, and independent party members to feel that they can come into the building, not be necessarily under risk of doing harm for their own, frankly, campaigns, elections, and constituents. And then also, though, the majority needs to be able to move a package around. We're on the eve of an election cycle, so you can bet they're keeping their eye on those policy buckets, and really keeping a lid on those policy buckets. So it's been up to us to make sure that our policy priorities and our funding priorities fit into said buckets. And that's really what we're going to be working on. We are nonpartisan. We are, or bipartisan, or omnipartisan, however you would like to describe it. And that means that when all of you get active, it helps us achieve success in that job, that you all are out there in every corner of the state, serving constituents, serving voters, serving the community, and are members of the community in your own way. So here's the second ask. Use that voice, use that expertise, and we'll help you lift it up. And hopefully we'll be able to just leverage that all for some great successes in this upcoming session. I think let's just go to the meat of the matter, I think. Sybil, you can't tell that I'm staring at your box, but I am staring at your box and wondering if we would dive in now to some of the specifics.
Sure. Thanks so much, Nikki. And I think it might be useful for us to sketch out just a couple of bills that we know about. Every legislators get to introduce bills without telling us, of course. And so there may be issues that are coming forward that we will learn about when all the bills get published, which will be at the end of next week. So we'll certainly be on a learning curve as we move forward. But there are a handful of bills that we know about to date, most all of which we really like. And you'll be hearing about them from us over the coming weeks as we seek letters to legislators or to the committee member, contacts, points of voices of support, and maybe even testimony, depending on the circumstance. So I'll start with one bill, which has to do with the current criminal statute that addresses unlawful dissemination of sexually explicit images. As we all know, this has been colloquially referred to as the revenge porn bill. I never know whether that's like respectful or not, so I struggle with how to actually describe it. But we know that that kind of behavior can have just an extremely devastating impact on victims and survivors. And the Sexual Assault Task Force kind of led the way with the alliance in support and the coalition in support of creating a criminal statute around that behavior a couple of sessions ago. And we have recently become aware of a couple of examples, egregious examples, where the statute had an unintentional loophole. And so we'll be fixing that loophole with this proposed bill, which will make it clear that the dissemination without consent of explicit images is illegal, even if you cannot tell from the image itself who the person is immediately. You are allowed to use other contextual information to identify and establish the identity of the person whose image is being circulated. And we know that it's extremely harmful to have images circulated without consent and in a humiliating fashion and with that intent, even if someone who never met you before could identify that it was a picture of you. And so, so we're excited about that. We think it has bipartisan support. It will be coming forward and likely had a hearing the first week or maybe early the second week of the session. So things are going to start happening really quickly. That bill has a couple of other pieces in it. One of which I'll mention is related, comes from a group called Restraining Orders Without Borders, that will amend the venue provisions for filing a protection order. Right now, you can file a protection order in either the county where the petitioner resides or the county where the respondent resides. This would add, or the county where the abuse took place. There are, I think, we think a narrow set of circumstances in which it could be possible that it would be more convenient for the petitioner to be able to file in the county where the abuse took place, even though it's not where they live or the respondent lives, but maybe all the witnesses are located there, for example. So, so that's another relatively technical piece that is a small tweak that we think could be helpful in a limited number of circumstances. So that bill is chief sponsored by Representative Vanessa Hartman, who's amazing. So that's being referred to as the Victims Protection Package, because it has a couple of concepts in one bill. Maybe, Niki, I'll kick it back to you to talk about the funding bills, and then we can kind of just go back and forth so people aren't sick of listening to me.
Sounds great. Would never be sick of listening to you, Sybil, because you really, I know you put your whole heart and brain into this work, and we appreciate that very much. So the funding pieces that you are talking about and alluding to is a priority bill coming out of the House Judiciary Committee. A lot of work focused in the Judiciary Committee this legislative session. And as you all may recall, we've done this in the past where we use a policy bill to highlight the importance of the outcome that we really want, which is money. So that's more additional funds into the ODSVS bank account, and that is both for the Survivor Housing Fund and for ODSVS distribution straight out. And as we've done in the past and what we will be doing, I would say probably the very first week of February, I think we may have already caught wind, Sybil, that we're looking at that Tuesday meeting, maybe. But real quick here, in about a week, we're going to be looking at a bill for funding that's going to ask for two very important things. The first very important thing, and this I would say, if we get into a position where we have to choose, if we make more money or no new money, this is where we want to hang our hats, and that is certainty and stability. In the process, there's a thing called current service level, and it tends to be something that rolls up. It's a budget that shows up each year. Or each budgeting cycle. There are 2-year cycles there, and is dedicated and just presumed to be allocated from budget to budget to budget. Current service level, or CSL, you may hear us call it. That's what we want and need, CSL, certainty and stability. In addition, we know that in the past 2 budget cycles or so, those dollars are going, less far. They're staying nearer and nearer. They don't go as far. And so what we need to make sure of is that we're trying to backfill some of that loss. I think we've heard from some programs that there were dollars that just didn't make it through the door. So we want to try and make that up. We've got an opportunity. We're halfway through a budget cycle. We're going to be asking for an additional $6 million in this bill. This is, again, that bill will be in front of the House Judiciary Committee in about a week. And that's going to be $3 million for the Survivor Housing Fund, an additional $3 million for OCADSV. Another part of that bill is for the Child Advocacy Centers, the CACs, you may hear that acronym, and they're asking for an additional $6 million as well. We felt that it was important that those two asks align so that nobody appears to be the outlier. And although 12 million is a big number, compared to some of the things that are moving around in the background and the priorities that are going to be costing much, much bigger numbers, I think the case we make is compelling enough. Let me change that sentence. I think the case you all make is compelling enough that we have a real chance at leveraging some of those additional funds. So guys, maybe I'm already on to the third ask, because we are going to be doing action alert. We're going to have, for all of these bills, what you will see is an opportunity to weigh in with written testimony. And that's going to be very important in the hurried of this legislative session. Legislators are likely to click on a bill file online, and they have an option to pull up testimony. And so it would just say like, hey, this bill, support. And we want them to have to do at least 2, pushes of their finger to scroll down to all the way at the bottom of those letters of support. We'll make it easy in terms of being plug and play, and hopefully you all will have the time and will be willing to take the time to help by submitting that testimony. Let's assume we're super successful in the House Judiciary Committee and we fly out of there with a unanimous vote, then we're in the budget process. That will give us probably about a week to kind of get ourselves reorganized, figure out the landscape, who's out there, who do we need to speak to next? We have a budget subcommittee. There's one big full committee for the budget, and they break down into sections of interest, or sometimes you could consider it by agency. The agency, of course, for us in this instance would be the Department of Justice, and they run through the public safety sub. That public safety sub has its own new set of legislators, different than the House Judiciary Policy. So we will, again, have to educate and advocate and make sure that that new set of legislators understands the importance of these funds. Thank you, Carly. The sub is the subcommittee. Thank you. And leadership. We'll need to lean on leadership. There's always they always come from a place of scarcity, which sounds crazy to say, but it is a real factor in our challenge. And so we'll be working with the leadership offices, and that would be the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, to make sure, and the 2 co-chairs, the 2 people who are involved in the full budget process itself. One of which some of you will know, Representative Tana Sanchez, who has worked as an advocate, done the direct work, service work for clients, and is really, I would say, the key operational aspect of some of the work that comes out of NIA as well. And certainly a key operational aspect of some of the work that comes out of Salem, given that she's in that powerful position. So your welcome in Salem will be warm, it will be heard, and folks that we'll be communicating with will understand the work you do. And that's a really important aspect, I hope, for you to feel comfortable to engage. Did I hit my
Awesome.
mark?
Thank you so much.
Okay,
So
good.
I'm looking at our time, and I want to make sure that we save a little bit of time for questions. So I'm going to hit on 3 other issues super briefly. And again, we'll follow up with more information when we have hearing information available, which Niki mentioned, we think will be maybe the 6th of February, which is a week from this Tuesday. So the 3 other issues that I wanted to tell people about are, number 1, we just learned, and it's so thrilling, that the governor's office and DHS are leading this session on a budget ask for TADVS, and that stands for Temporary Assistance to Domestic Violence Survivors. You all may remember that we have, you all worked very hard, and the Alliance and the Coalition worked very hard, I think it was back in 2006, to establish TADVS as a benefit program for survivors needing immediate and emergency financial assistance to establish safety. It is run through the Department of Human Services to people who are survivors and who have minor children in the home, in other words, who are TANF eligible, are eligible for these benefits. It was initially established at $1,200. That used to be enough to pay for first, last, and a deposit. It's laughably small now compared to the prices and the services that are needed today. And so 1997, thank you, Jane. Wow. Golly. Anyway, so it has not been increased in terms of its benefit since then. Thanks to Melissa Earlbaum and folks at CWS most recently, but to all of you for so many years, helping to advocate for these dollars. And, we all know that these dollars can be life-saving dollars, just like ODSVS and survivor housing funds can be. So the governor's office recently did some tours of a few shelter program facilities and heard from people really upfront and viscerally about how important those dollars are and how low they are. And so their effort this session is to raise that benefit amount to $4,500. Obviously, that's not the full solution, but it's huge. It is a $25 million price tag. So it's a big, big ask, and there will need to be a lot of advocacy about the importance of those dollars. And they are planning already for the next session. So they're asking for 25 million to carry through the rest of this biennium. And then the next session, they have a policy option package that would be a $50 million price tag to carry that increase through into the next biennium. So that's coming forward. And then just briefly, two other bills to let you all know about. One is Representative Kevin Mannix, along with a bipartisan group of legislators, is leading the charge to improve our stalking statute, most specifically in two ways. One, to better include cyber stalking behaviors in the list of contacts that can give rise to a stalking crime or a stalking protection order, and that can be prohibited by a stalking protection order. And then secondly, to increase the penalties for violation of orders and for the crime of stalking. So that's another hearing that there will be a lot of interest in and has bipartisan support. And then the last issue that has come before us for discussion is various ways in which the expungement process will play out related to domestic and sexual violence protection orders, and also to improving access to expungement without the barrier of fines and fees. So more detail on all of those is available, but I'm going to stop now. And thanks for letting us know, and we'll be sure to reach out when we know when the hearing dates are, and share the links where you can click to send an email of support. And just a brief blurb, and feel free to keep throwing questions in, but just to brief, I think before I started doing this work, I was like, these emails don't make any difference. I don't want to spend my email, for God's sake, who needs another email? And all I have to say is doing this work in the building, and I think I see Niki nodding, like, it's incredibly helpful. So you're taking the time, or any of us in our lives, taking the time to communicate with our legislators. It really does make a difference. And if legislators don't hear from their constituents, or they don't hear from Oregonians, they can often come to the conclusion that the bill's not that important, or the issue isn't that important. And so it's just really, really helpful. So I encourage you all to do it. And we try to make it as easy as possible by giving you all the info and some talking points that you can use if you like. You'll be hearing from us and from Rowan and others as we reach out about the hearings and the opportunities for input. Also, you know where to find us. So if questions come up down the line, feel free to reach out. And I see Bob saying that he has lots of stats. around housing and the cost of living and the cost of providing services. And like, yes, please, we would love that information. That would be incredibly helpful. And, you know, I would love it as soon as possible if you have anything easy to lying around, but also that's the kind of thing that I think would be really helpful for the legislature to hear in emails. And to Kalia, if I pronounced your name correctly, we will email you all with opportunities. The links to submit testimony right now don't exist yet because the hearings haven't actually been officially posted. As soon as they are, we will share that information with you, and that will include a place where you can send your email in support or, you know, regarding the bills. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we will look forward to the next time around.
Have a wonderful, warm weekend.
Take care, everybody. To make sure that, to kick it back to Rowan in case anybody has any questions.
If there are any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will read them out. And yeah. All right. From Bob, he says there are current loopholes in the system that cyber stalking. Thank you for working on that.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us know. And we'll be sure to reach out when we know when the hearing dates are and share the links where you can click to send an email of support. And, you know, just a brief blurb, and feel free to keep throwing questions in. But